So we'll go ahead and get started here real quickly. Remember that today is an optional meeting. I'm just going to be spending about 15 minutes talking about integrating quotes from sources into your writing and how to do that correctly. And then afterwards, if you have any questions about your topics or research questions or the summary response paper, I will hang around and you can ask. So let me go ahead and share my screen. And here we go. So I'm going to start with where periods go when you are quoting material from a source. And this is, I would say, the number one mistake that I see in student writing when you're quoting is that the period is placed incorrectly. So the question is, does the period go inside of the quotation marks or outside of the quotation marks? And there's two rules that we can follow for that. The first one is that 99% of the time, periods actually belong inside of the quotes. The only exception to that is if your quote is followed by an in-text citation. And I'm going to show you examples of exactly what I mean. And I think you'll be familiar with what I'm talking about once you see it. So this is correct. Connor suggests that we, quote, learn how to use punctuation correctly, period, right here, before the ending quotation. Incorrect would be the same sentence, but see now the period is here outside of the quotation mark. This is incorrect always. There's no exception here to this rule. If this was your sentence, this would be incorrect. So if you've got a teacher who likes to ding you for tiny little grammatical mistakes, that's going to be a mistake, unless your teacher doesn't know, because I see a surprising amount of teachers and professionals who also are not aware of this rule. So the way that I like to think of it is that these quotes right here, these are the end of your sentence. Everything that is part of your sentence needs to be inside of the quotation marks. So if this period is over here, it's no longer part of the sentence, which means that you're missing a period to end your sentence. So here's an example of the exception when you would put the period after the quotes, and you'll notice that we have a similar sentence. The article suggests that we quote, learn how to use punctuation correctly, quote, but now I've got the author's last name, Connor. Instead of it being in the sentence here, it's listed at the end of the sentence as an in-text citation. When you have an in-text citation, which is really just the author's last name in parentheses, you may place the period at the very, very end of the citation. And that's because this in-text citation is technically part of your sentence. Another example of what would be incorrect is this right here, which is the same sentence, but no punctuation at all. And then another really common mistake that I see is the double periods. So a period here and a period here. Sometimes I even see three. I'll see one before the quote, after the quote, and then again at the end. You don't need that many. You only ever need one. And just to reiterate, if you've got an in-text citation, it comes at the end. If you do not have an in-text citation, it comes before the quote. This rule is different in Europe. That's the only other exception. In Europe, their grammar is slightly different than ours, and they place their periods outside of the quotation marks. But we're not in Europe, and we're not writing for an audience in Europe, so we want to follow the US standard rules. Commas. Commas are really easy because there's only one rule. They go inside the quotes, and that's it. There's never a time when you would be placing a comma outside of a quotation mark. So in the example here to the right, Connor said, comma, this is an important rule. See how the comma is placed right here within the quotation mark, and then we can continue our sentence. So not much to explain there. The comma is always inside of the quotation. Question marks and exclamation points are a little bit trickier. So the placement of these two items depends on the original quote, and I'll show you an example. If it's part of the quote, it goes inside of the quotation mark, just like the periods and commas. But if it's not part of the quote, it goes on the outside. So here's an example. Connor asked, why doesn't anyone follow the rules? Question mark, quotation. So because Connor is the person who's actually asking this, and the quotations indicate that I'm using a direct quote, the question mark is part of the quote itself. So the person that I am quoting is asking a question, so it goes within the quotes. On the other hand, if I, as the writer of the paper, am the one asking the question, so what if Connor had said, there are no rules, quote, question mark. Now the question mark's on the outside because that question mark is not part of the quote. It's part of what I said as the writer of the sentence. The same rules apply for exclamation points. So these, sometimes I feel like these can be tricky, but just because it's not as straightforward as the periods and commas are. But if you have a question, you can always ask. Ellipses. Ellipses are those three little dots, and I see these used incorrectly all the time as well. The rule is that you only use them when you're cutting out content from the middle of a sentence. I tend to see them at the beginning and end of sentences all the time, and that's not where they go. So let me show you some examples. Here's the original sentence we'll look at. I believe all students should learn certain rules, like how to place periods in quotes. So if I was going to quote that material, and I was going to use ellipses, it says Connor mentioned students should learn ... how to place periods in quotes. The reason that the ... is there is because I cut out the phrase certain rules and then the word like. So when you omit or cut out words that are in the middle of a sentence, but you're going to use something from the beginning and something from the end, that's where you use the ... to indicate I cut something out. There was more here, but I didn't include it. And there's a lot of reasons why you might want to do that. Maybe what's being said in the middle of the sentence isn't really relevant to what you want to say, or it's an example that you don't feel that you need, or it makes the sentence way, way too long, because we don't want to have a quote that runs into 3, 4, 5 lines in a paper that we write. You want to keep the quotes short and to the point. So you can cut out middle fluff that you don't need. As long as the sentence still reads correctly, you can cut out anything you want. So you can see students should learn how to place periods in quotes. Makes just as much sense as students should learn certain rules, like how to place periods in quotes. So this is the correct use of the ellipses. Incorrect would be placing these ellipses here at the beginning. So the original said, I believe all students should learn. And you can see I cut out, I believe all, right? So that's not present here. You do not have to have the dots here to indicate that. It's just one of the rules. Like if you cut from the beginning of a sentence, you do not have to indicate that you did so. Same thing at the end. How to place periods in quotes. I cut in quotes. This is incorrect. The correct, oops, I should have the correct version there. Should look like, oops. Just like this. So just the same exact thing, except for we do not have those ellipses. We're missing a period now. There we go. Let's get the period there. Okay. So this is correct without the ellipses at the beginning, and we just end with a period because that is the end of the sentence. Okay, last but not least, brackets. You've probably seen brackets used in writing and maybe wondered what they were for, or just kind of ignored them because you didn't know what they were for. So I'm going to tell you, and that way you'll both understand it when you're reading other articles in your research, and you'll be able to use them when you're quoting material, and you'll do it correctly. So the brackets, well, first and foremost, the brackets are not the same thing as parentheses. So the parentheses are like on your 9 and 0 keys on your keyboard, whereas brackets are to the right of the P. And I'll show you what they look like here. In our original sentence, it says, when we provide students with this information, they can write better. Let's say your sentence, you want to say, Connor suggested that providing students with this information can help them write better. So when you want to, so sometimes this is a struggle. You find an article that you like and you find some information in it that you want to use as a quote, but it doesn't make grammatical sense to use it in your sentence. And then you're like, well, gosh, this, I don't want to rewrite my sentence, or my sentence will sound best if I do it this way. But you can't change a direct quote, right? Like everybody knows, if you're going to put quotations around it, it's because you're using it word for word. That's the indication that it is a direct quote from someone else. But there is an exception. You can change a direct quote. You can't change the meaning and you can't swap out words, but you can change grammar to make it work in your own sentence. When you do that, when you make a grammatical change, like here I've changed provide to providing, I use the bracket to indicate that I changed the end of this word. So it's really that simple. If you make a grammatical change, you use brackets just around the part of the word that you changed. And you can see here too, I did something kind of neat with the direct quote. I broke it up into 2 separate quotes rather than one long one. And I did that just by interrupting it with a couple of my own words here. And this helps your writing sound better, because when you over quote and you have quotes that are too long, it makes you sound incompetent as the writer. Like you don't have much to say at all, and all you can do is just quote other people. So that's why we want to have short quotes. And if we have a long quote that we want to use, the trick is to just break it up by using some of your own language here in the middle. So I used provide students with this information and the words write better, and interrupted them with can help them. So now this sounds more like my sentence than Connor's sentence. Another quick example is that you can use brackets for capitalization. And this is actually, you need to use brackets for capitalization. So here's the original again. When we provide students with this information, they can write better. Let's say in your sentence, you want to write, it only makes sense that when we provide students with this information, they can write better. When in the original is capitalized, right? Because it's the beginning of the sentence. In my sentence, this is the beginning, so the I is capitalized. It's not correct to throw in a capital W in the middle of your sentence just because it's a direct quotation. Like putting these quotation marks here doesn't mean, oh, we can just do whatever we want grammatically. Your sentence still needs to be correct. So what you would do is change that W to lowercase, put the brackets around it to indicate that you have changed it. And that is all, folks. That is all I wanted to cover today. Like I said, these are really common mistakes that I see, especially with the periods and the ellipses and even the question marks. So hopefully this was helpful to you, and it will help you do more polishing. That's a word I like to use a lot. I think that polishing writing is what ultimately makes it really strong in the end. And the more little tips and tricks that you know to polish things, the more, I guess, the more competent your writing is going to seem. Any questions about this stuff?
Can you go back to the ... thing? Because I didn't really catch all of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then after that, can you do the number 3 again for the bracket?
Yes, yep, absolutely. Okay, so ellipses. Do you want me just to summarize it, or did you just want to see the screen, or did you have a question? What's that?
Can you please summarize it?
Yeah, sure. The basic rule is that the only time that you would use the ellipses are when you cut out information from the middle of a sentence that you're quoting. So this first example right here, where I'm circling with my mouse, is the only correct one, because I've cut out the words certain, rules, and like, and I've kind of glued together the rest of the sentence just without those words. You do not need to use them at the beginning of a sentence. Even if you take the quote from the middle of where the sentence starts, you don't need them. And if you cut your quote off early, you don't need them. So the correct version, even if you're cutting from the beginning or the end, looks like this down here, where you just go right into the quote and then you end with the period. It doesn't matter if there's actually a period in the original that you're quoting, you still end with the period, because that's what's grammatically correct in your paper, is to end with a period. Questions about that? Okay, so let me come back to brackets. Is there a specific question, or did you want me to summarize it?
I think my question was more so when you said when Connor I wasn't quite for sure was, oh, this is a new one. I wasn't quite for sure was, when we put the bracket inside a quotation, was that, was it because, can you just redo it again? I'm just a little confused, that's all.
Yeah, sure. No,
Thank you.
you're welcome. Okay, so let me get the examples up there. Okay, so the reason that we use brackets is to show that we have made a change to the, or I should clarify, show that we've made a grammatical change to the original sentence that we're quoting. So this is the original sentence from, I guess it would make sense to add in like this sentence here is meant to be something from a different piece of writing. So like this original from an article by Connor. So it's part of the research that we've done is we found this article written by someone named Connor, and Connor wrote, when we provide students with this information, they can write better. Now I want to use this sentence that Connor wrote in my own writing. So I say, Connor suggested that providing students with this information can help them write better. So I took this provide from the original because it wouldn't make grammatical sense to say Connor suggested that provide students with this information. So I need to change it to providing, so it's grammatically correct. So I just put the brackets around the part of the word that I changed. So I got rid of the E, I added the ing, and I used brackets to indicate that I made a change.
And when you did the change, when we had the when you were quoting, and then you had, it started with the when, and you put a bracket around the W, is that because you changed the W from a capital to a lower? Okay, that's, yeah.
Yep, that's exactly why. Yep, because it would be incorrect to capitalize the word when in my sentence because we only capitalize like, you know, proper nouns and the word I in the middle of a sentence. So since in order for when to be correct in my sentence, it needs to be lowercase, I indicated that I changed it by putting the brackets around it.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Any other questions or slides that you guys want me to go back to? Okay. I stopped the sharing of the screen. So you guys are free to head out and enjoy the rest of your day. Or if you had questions that you wanted to ask me about anything related to class, then feel free to hang around and ask. Thanks for coming in today and have a good afternoon.
Can you explain the assignment for annotating? Because I had the Word document and I have like the notes, but I just don't know if will the notes save on the Word document if I put notes?
Are you using the comment feature like in Microsoft Word?
Yeah, it's the comment. So I went on review and I put the comment thing, the new comment thing on there.
Yeah, so let me share my screen and make sure that we're talking about the same thing because I don't want to say yes, it'll save. Okay, so you've got like a Word document like
And you
such.
go on review.
Yep. So you're on review and like let's say you highlight something and you add a comment and you say, I thought.
Oh, that's how you do it.
Yeah.
Oh, I did it wrong then. Oops.
That's all
Is that
right. I hope that's how you should do it.
Okay.
And then
Is it all?
when you save it, I will be able to see the comments that you left.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so how do you do it again? So you go on.
So you
go
want
on
to
Word.
you can highlight one word or so are you in your document?
Yeah, I'm highlighting, but I don't know how to get to comments.
So it's in the review tab
Yeah.
and then it's like left of center where it says new comment.
Oh, so I highlight, then I say new comment on there.
Yep, exactly.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
how you explain the brackets, because I know for myself in my writings, past writings, um, I would have a capitalized letter in a quote within the sentence. So to know that I could just put that in a bracket with the lowercase letter makes much more grammatical sense. So I think that was pretty cool. And then I like the way how you explained uh, when to appropriately use exclamation marks or question marks within a quote, because I would have a tendency to use it within a quotation as well, if it was asked or not asked.
Yeah, those two, like, so the brackets, once you learn that, I feel like it's the coolest, it's the simplest thing.
Mhm.
But then, you know, it really does, it allows your writing, it just seems like you know what you're doing, because people who do know what they're doing know that you're supposed to do that. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's kind of cool once you know it, and it's not like it's hard, then you've kind of got a new tool in your tool belt.
Mhm.
And what now, for the life of me, what was the question marks? That one's tricky. Like, I honestly, I just figured that out a couple of years ago. And
Okay.
I just recently feel like I've been able to explain it well. Because it's tricky. You really have to think about, you know, the sentence to figure out whether it goes in or out. But yeah, good. Well, I'm glad it was helpful.
And also too, going back to the brackets, that you could actually edit words, like place words in, like you said, provide, and then you put providing within the brackets. I didn't know you could do that either, because I thought, well, maybe if you're quoting something, it needs to be from its original source. But if it's going to make grammatical sense, then you could go ahead and add a word within the bracket. So that's going to help me out a lot in the future. Thank you.
Yeah, you're very welcome. I'm glad it was helpful.
Okay, thank you.